Well, hello, and welcome back to another exciting edition of Coffee with Stephen. So, this week's blog is, I'm going to be candid with you, it's a little dense. There is a lot that we're talking about in this one, and it's pretty philosophical. So, over the last week, there's been a flurry of combatives, for lack of a better term, going back and forth on Facebook. And I'll be the first to admit I've probably been involved in some of them. But that all notwithstanding, I'm starting to see a perpetual theme in a lot of the people that are commenting that are decidedly anti-gun. While they don't necessarily put themselves out as being anti-gun, they definitely are part of what I would refer to as a collectivist mentality. And that got me thinking about this whole concept of collectivism. It also, honestly, put me into a position where I started drawing a line, for lack of a better term. So let's talk about it briefly. I try to make the distinction in this week's blog between collectivism and individualism. I have been accused of being a right-wing conservative. That seems to be an overriding methodology that people that disagree with me tend to bandy about, that somehow this is going to be interpreted negatively by the people that have seen it. Full disclosure, I am not a right-wing conservative. I am what I would consider myself to be as a classical liberal. In modern parlance, classical liberalism is probably best described as libertarianism. So if we want to put a moniker on me at all, I'm probably a libertarian. Okay, that all notwithstanding, the biggest issue that I see here is this idea of moving away from individual freedom. In fact, I reference it in the blog. We saw all of these school children leave their classes, go out to essentially beg the government to take away their rights. This is completely antithetical to who we are as a nation. We've fought wars against the idea of collectivism. Okay, fascism, communism, socialism, these all share one common denominator, and that is the idea that the state has some control, or massive control, frankly, over the individual, that the individual is nothing more than a secondary unit of the collective. That is not who we are. That is not the philosophical basis for what we believe. We believe in rugged individualism. There are certain requirements to adhere to a free society where we essentially allow for a modicum of regulation so that other individual rights are not affected by the actions of another individual. That notwithstanding, our entire premise is based on the idea of limited government. So, taking that to the next logical conclusion, I've essentially said to the anti-gun crowd, here's the deal. You want to continue to restrict my individual ability to own firearms. You want to restrict the ability for any law-abiding citizen to own firearms. And you do so under the auspices of enhancing freedom. That will not stand. If you want to reduce my ability even further to own a firearm, you have to begin the conversation by giving up something on your own. You see, for the last 30 years, we have consistently given up our rights so that the anti-gun crowd can be emotionally codified. Well, we're done with that. Now it's the turn for the anti-gun crowd to start giving back our rights. We want those rights to be reintroduced to the law-abiding citizen. Once those rights have been reintroduced, then we can begin a discussion as to what common sense or reasonable restrictions we want to place on ourselves. But up until that point, we're done. It's now in the court of the antis. They can go ahead and they can compromise and make a decision as to what they want to give up on, because the antis have been extraordinarily clear. Their ultimate goal is the eradication of firearms. You can't negotiate with somebody who ultimately wants nothing more than to essentially erase you out of existence. You can't partially give up your right to exist. So now it's their turn. In any event, I want you to take a look at the blog. If you have any questions or you have any comments or you want to challenge me on some of the underlying assumptions, absolutely. Give me an email. It's Stephen@artemishq.com. And as I always say, train constantly, train consistently, train with purpose, and above all else, stay vigilant. Until next week when we have coffee together, stay safe.